Psalm 133 verse 1 says, "Look, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity." So if this is something that's good for us to dwell together in unity, what do you think Satan's going to try to do? Disrupt the unity. Unity is going to be, it's good for us, but it's also so important as we approach the end of this system to be there for one another. So to help us with this, let's all turn to the Bible book of Mark. Let's go to Jesus' words and let's get a principle. Mark chapter 3 is where I want you to go. Mark chapter 3. So, Satan is so cunning, he's so powerful. He influenced the first century religious leaders to think that Jesus was the enemy. And because of creating that division between the religious leaders and Jesus, spreading those ideas, the first century people killed Jesus. Here's what they said about Jesus in verse 22. It says, the scribes, these were the religious leaders who came down from Jerusalem, were saying about Jesus, he, Jesus, has Beelzebub. You know what they're saying there? He's demonized. Imagine that. Accusing Jesus of being demonized. And then they believed it. And then they go on to say he expels the demons by means of the ruler of the demons. So then Jesus in 23, so after calling them to him, he spoke to them with illustrations and he asked this question, how can Satan expel Satan? You're saying I'm demonized and I'm expelling demons. How can Satan it doesn't make sense. But here's a principle that Jesus says next, and this is what we want you to take notice of. Verse 24. He said this, Jesus warned us. If a kingdom becomes divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house becomes divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. See, what Satan was trying to do was divide, was to separate, to create a division. Why? Because he wanted Christians to fall. He wants to divide and conquer. See, if I can divide and conquer, Satan says, if I do that, if I can get just one individual, just kind of separate him out from the rest, I can take him down. But here's what Satan wants to do. Satan wants us to think that our brothers and sisters are the enemy. Satan wants us to think that our marriage mate is the enemy. Satan wants children to think that the parents are the enemy. Satan's trying to divide and conquer. Why? Because he wants to bring the house down. He wants to bring us down. We got a congregation here. He wants to separate it. He wants to divide it. We've got families here. He wants to divide them. You and I cannot allow the devil to destroy our unity. How good and how pleasant it is for us to dwell together in unity. There's strength in that. Let's go back to the scripture we read in the earlier talk. Go to 1 Peter 5:8. I want to demonstrate something. We read this in the earlier discussion, but I want to put the emphasis in a little different location on this verse. It says, keep your senses, be watchful. I put the emphasis earlier on us, but I want to put this out here. Keep your senses, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil. So there's the enemy. It's right in front of us. Jehovah says, there's the enemy. It's Satan, the devil. It's not your brother or sister. It's not your marriage mate. It's not your family members. It's Satan, the devil. He's the enemy. But notice what he does. It says he walks about like a roaring lion seeking to devour someone. And when a lion is hungry, you know what he does when he's hungry? He does this. I'm going to demonstrate. I don't want to scare anyone, okay? So he does this. A lion will sneak up on a herd of animals and he'll roar into the ground. And his roar is so powerful. When he roars into the ground shakes. But here's why he does that. Because then the sound goes out in all different directions and you don't know where it's coming from. And you know what the herd does when they hear the roar? They scatter. They divide. And guess what one of those the herd does? Runs right into the mouth of the lion. That's what Satan, he's the enemy. He's the one that's trying to devour us. He's trying to divide us, roar into the ground, cause problems, and cause us to think that the problems are here, and they're not here. The problems are out there. He's the problem, Satan the devil. So we can't lose sight of that. Here's some other warnings from other scriptures to us as Christians. Here's one that it says, do not give the devil an opportunity. That's a warning to us as Christians. Don't allow him to get in between you and someone else. Ephesians 6:11 says, stand firm against the devil. James 4:7, we read it earlier, oppose the devil. Revelation 12:12, a prophecy about the time of the end. This is the one that we just touched on, but we read Revelation 12:9 earlier. Here's what verse 12 says. Woe, because the devil has come down to you, having great anger, knowing that he has a short period of time. See, Satan is down here and he's going to try to divide us. We can't let it happen. So, what can help us? What can help us to not fall prey to Satan's tactic to divide and conquer? What can help us? Romans 1 verse 20 talks about God's invisible qualities. Romans 1:20 says, for his, that's God's, invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onward. From the world's creation onward. They are, because they are perceived by the things made, even his eternal power and Godship, so that they are inexcusable. We're going to look at God's creation, and we're going to learn how we, as humans, can never allow the devil to destroy our unity. We're going to look at an animal. Does anyone know what that is? But this is a Cape buffalo. And a Cape buffalo, it's not related to the water buffalo at all. The water buffalo is on the Asian continent. The Cape buffalo, this animal, is on the sub-Saharan African continent. So the Cape buffalo, we're going to learn 4 things from this animal, this animal herd. And these 4 things, if we take these to heart, Satan will never be able to divide and conquer us if we follow their example. So we learn about Jehovah. Jehovah is put in the world around us, in the animal world, the lessons that we can learn about him. So this is a Cape buffalo. So this Cape buffalo, let's go to our second. Let's go to our second picture. So the first thing we want you to see here is you see a Cape buffalo herd, and they're in Africa, and they're around a watering hole. Now we want to learn 2 things from this picture about the Cape buffalo, and these 2 points will help us to stay united, to dwell together in unity. The first one that we want you to take away is that the Cape buffalo builds its life around water because it's in the desert. The sub-Saharan desert gets spring rains, and then it doesn't get rain probably until late November. So they get spring rains, maybe March, April, and then they don't get rain again. And so the rains they get, these animals are instinctive. They know that they have to make this water last. So the Cape buffalo then they build their lives around water. That's the first thing we want to take away. Now, how does that relate to you and me as Christians? Everyone go with me to the last book of the Bible, Revelation. Go to the last chapter of the Bible, Revelation chapter 22. It's all about water. The last chapter in the Bible is all about water, but it's not physical water. So Revelation chapter 22, and look at the first verse. This is a vision that John sees, and it says, he, the angel, showed me a river of water of life. So we want to identify what this river of water of life is. Look at it. It says it's clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, and down the middle of its main street. On both sides of the river were trees of life, producing 12 crops of fruit, yielding their fruit each month. And the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. So it's not literal water. In verse 17, it says, "In the Spirit," that's God's Holy Spirit, "and the bride," that's God's anointed ones here on earth, keep on saying, "Come." And let anyone hearing say, "Come." And let anyone thirsting come. Let anyone who wishes take life's water free. What's the water we're talking about? It's God's word. So be like the Cape Buffalo. They build their lives around water. We need to. So what's the takeaway? Read God's word every day. Because you know what that will help you and me do? It'll help us to have the thoughts of God dominate our thinking and dominate our hearts, and whatever out of the heart's abundance the mouth speaks. So guess what? You and I, out of our hearts will come things that don't divide, but unite. The Cape Buffalo herd is cohesive. They do everything together. That's an interesting point. This is really a gigantic herd. If we could span back on that, this herd is huge. But it's springtime. There's a lot of water, so they're all together. Sadly, as the later summer months come, the water starts to evaporate. Now they have to break up into smaller groups, but they never separate from one another. They stay together. They do all things together. They're cohesive. So that's the second point we want to take away, is as Jehovah's people, get close and do things together. Do things together. Let's get some direction from Christ in this area. If you're at John 17, let's read verse 16. John 17. Remember, the entire 17th chapter is Jesus praying. But so he says this to his Father in verse 16. In reference to the ones that had followed him, these 11 faithful ones with him, he says this in verse 16. These 11, are no part of the world, just as I am no part of the world. See, so again, we don't want to be mixing with the world. Jesus is saying, help these 11. And then look at verse 21, because we're in this verse, you and me. Verse 21. Jesus says this. He says, so that they, the 11, may all be one, just as you, Father, are in union with me, and I am in union with you, that they may also be in union with us, so that the world may believe that you sent me forth. So Jesus was praying that his followers would be one, united, and be no part of the world. So a really good takeaway is be like the Cape Buffalo. These animals, it's really interesting. When they go to the watering hole, this is an example. The Cape Buffalo only goes to the watering hole twice a day. They don't just hang out around the water all day and drink. No, because they know that instinctively they have to make that water last. So they only go to the watering hole twice a day. But it's fascinating to watch them go, because we're in the sub-Saharan desert. It's hot. Most of the time, they go as a group, they go into the shade. They get in the shade. But every morning, they go to the watering hole, and every afternoon. So in the morning, when they go to the watering hole, what will happen is one of the Cape Buffalo herd will get up and start heading towards the water. And when one gets up and starts heading, they all get up. Not one of them says, I'm not thirsty. I'm going to stay here. Or not one says, I'm not thirsty right now. In fact, I was in the middle of something. I'm going to go do this. They don't do that. When they all go to the watering hole together, they all get up. One will get up and start it, and then they all get up and they all go, and they'll drink. They know instinctively how much to drink, and then one starts heading back, and I'm going to stay and play. This is cooler than no. They all go. They do everything together. They stick together. It's a beautiful thing. And again, Jesus warned us in his final prayer, stay united and to be no part of the world. So take that to heart. Get closer. Stick together. Do everything together. So that's our second thing, is do everything together. Be cohesive. Jesus encouraged us to do that. There's a difference between this picture and the first picture you saw, and it's age. its age. Okay, I just want to contrast the first picture. The first picture was a young bull. Okay, now the old bulls represent your elders. This is an old bull. Now, it might look like he's by himself. He's really not. All around him are Cape buffalo. In fact, what he's doing is he's watching. He's a protector. Now the third point that we want to share with you about the Cape buffalo herd, and this is pretty amazing. It fascinated me when I researched this, but it's fascinating that in most wild animal kingdoms, there's an alpha bull, but not in the Cape buffalo herd. There is no alpha. And that was surprising to me. But there's no alpha bull. There's lots of older bulls and younger bulls, but it's fascinating how they work together. You never see two of them butting heads to determine who's in charge here. Doesn't happen. It's amazing. There's no alpha bull in the Cape buffalo herd. And I want to go back to how this works for their benefit and how this is established. It's pretty powerful. When I mentioned when they go to the watering hole twice a day, in late summer, when the flock has to, there's the water diminishes, and so there's a watering hole over here, and there's a watering hole over here, and one over here, and one over here. They have to break up into smaller groups. And it's really interesting. They instinctively, bulls take care of each segment of the herd. But now here's when it gets interesting. When they go to the watering hole, so let's say you've got a watering hole here, and there's a bull with a little group over here, and a bull with a little group over here, and a bull with a little group over here, and a bull with, and they share this watering hole. They don't get too far apart, but for shade, same thing. You can't all, the herd's too big to all fit under one tree. So they have to get in the shade in different areas. But bulls are with each little group, and they're within eyesight of each other. But when this group over here is heading to this water hole, they'll get up and start heading towards the watering hole, and the bull will get out in front and take the lead to watch for any wild animals that could be a danger. So the bull will take the lead, and as they're approaching the watering hole, this group over here with the bull will see this group. They'll all get up, and it's when they all get up, the bull that's taking the lead with the first group, he goes around to the back, and the bull with the second group gets in front. So they work together. And then they're heading towards the watering hole. Here's this bull with the group in the shade here. They see him, they all get up. The bull gets out front, the ones get all together, and the one that was in the lead goes over to the side. And then as they get to the next group, that bull gets out front, and then the bull that was here goes to this side. So they have a bull, a bull, a bull, and a bull with the herd in between. But they all work together. It's a beautiful thing how they all work together for the good of the herd. So what's a Bible principle that would help, that applies for us? Let's go to James 3. Go down to the last two verses in James 3. These are qualifications to serve as elders, these two verses. Notice what the dominant quality that's in place according to these two verses. It says, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure, then peaceable, reasonable, ready to obey, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial, not hypocritical. Verse 18, moreover, the fruit of righteousness is sown in peaceful conditions for those who are making peace. Isn't that interesting? Peace is mentioned 3 times in these two verses. A dominant quality of the brothers taking the lead is that they're peaceable, according to verse 17. In verse 18, they contribute to peaceful conditions, just like the Cape buffalo does. And then finally, if there's a disruption of peace, then they make peace. That's the last part of that verse. See, that for those who are making peace. So again, what do the bulls do for the herd is they contribute to the peace. And then, of course, we know that they're there to protect the flock. Our last point, guess who the primary enemy is of the Cape buffalo herd? You got it. It's the lion. There was, and so to just give you a visual for this fourth, don't put it up yet, but just to give you a visual, there's a national park in the Sahara Desert. It's called Kruger National Park, Kruger, and there's a video called "The Battle at Kruger," and it's between a pride of lions sneak up on a herd of Cape buffalo as they're heading to the watering hole. This big herd, and it was about 4 or 5, maybe 6 lions, and they're hungry. So there's a bull out in front of this whole herd, and they're heading towards the watering hole. And there's a bull out front. You see him go, like he can pick up the scent of the lion. And just as that time happened, the lions roar, the herd scatters, and one little baby Cape buffalo didn't know what to do, and it ran into the water. And all the lions went and jumped on that little baby in the water. While that little baby was in the water, so crocodiles came up and grabbed his legs and started pulling him in the water. So we had crocodiles pulling him in, we had lions pulling him out, and the herd had scattered. It's a video of this, and I'm watching it like this because I don't, but anyway, because I'm thinking this. You hear the little baby crying out, and then you think, oh, this, and it's going on, and the video's going on for minutes, and you're thinking, he's got to be a goner. And the camera, there was a safari going on there, and they were on the other side of the watering hole, and they were watching this, and it's on camera. And then you hear one of the persons that's on the safari go, "Whoa," because you could hear their voices. And then the camera spans back. And here comes the entire herd to rescue that little baby. And when I say the entire herd, when they span back, here's the bulls in the forefront. And there's bulls, but the bulls are coming in, they're going into the water to get the crocodiles. And they're going in to get the lions, and they surround them, and you see the crocodiles let go, and they take off. They're gone. They leave, and so now the lions have it. It's like 3 or 4 lions got a hold of this thing, and they're starting to pull it out, and you see the lions see the buffalo, and it's almost like you could just hear the lion going, "Uh oh," But anyway, and then one of the bulls goes right into those lions, and he takes one of those horns. And he goes, and he's a strategist, or he's just an expert with these horns. And he takes that one of those lions, and he goes, whoop, and this lion goes, and then a bunch of bulls go after him and run it off. Here's kind of what it looked like. Let's look at this. And look at how big those bulls are compared to that lion. But look at how big they are because they stick together. That lion knows it doesn't have a chance. See, Satan knows if we stick together, he doesn't have a chance. So what's our fourth takeaway? When danger strikes, and danger hits all congregations, situations come up, problems, difficulties, it comes up in all congregations because we're all imperfect. But when danger strikes, or when a brother or sister gets just one in our spiritual family, when danger strikes, everybody comes to the rescue. Let's look at a Bible principle that Paul wrote to the Corinthian congregation. And it was when this was a newly formed congregation. Go to 1 Corinthians. It's in his first letter. Go to verse 12. He's talking about how the congregation sticks together. That's what he's talking about in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And of course, you can see in the picture, it's especially the bulls working together to protect the herd there. So, but go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and go down to verse 26. There's a really nice succinct principle here. 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 26. It says, about the congregation now. If you read, there's so many good points in this 1 Corinthians 12 to benefit and build up our congregations. But verse 12 says, if one member, just one, if one member suffers, because of our unity, it says, all the other members suffer with it. Or if a member is glorified, all the other members rejoice with it. What a beautiful principle. And what a beautiful principle. Again, it helps us. We're a family, and we don't want to lose one. Satan is trying to divide and conquer. He's trying to put a wedge in congregations, and he wants somebody to sit over there because of something that somebody over here did. But we don't want to let that happen. We want to make peace. We want to work together. So again, when danger strikes, the enemy is Satan, the devil, and all of us are going to come to the rescue because we don't want to lose even one of us as we approach the end of this system. So you can take the picture down. So here's our last thought, and this is a very personal thought for each one of us as a member of a congregation, as a member of a family, a marriage. This is good for all of us to help us to maintain unity. Let's go to Colossians 3. Let's conclude with Colossians 3. Colossians chapter 3. Now there's 6 points that are mentioned in this little passage here, Colossians 3. It starts at verse 12. It says, accordingly as God's chosen ones, that's all of us. Jehovah's drawn all of us. We know what it really means as anointed ones, but then he's drawn each and every one of us into his congregation to be under their care. But it says, accordingly as God's chosen ones, holy and loved. Now here's the personal, this is very personal for each one of us. Clothe yourselves. So what's Paul saying? Put the qualities that I'm going to talk about, put them on and never take them off. Clothe yourselves with these qualities. This isn't like your wardrobe. This is something you want to put on and never take off. Clothe yourselves. Now he mentions 5 qualities in just verse 12. It says, clothe yourselves with the tender affections of, number 1, compassion. May compassion dominate each one of us. Compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, and patience. There's 5 qualities right there. Clothe yourselves. May these qualities dominate each one of us. And you know what? Wouldn't that be just so great if we could all do this perfectly? Man, it would be nice. But we can't. But you can see what we want to do. These are our dominant qualities. These 5 qualities. But we're going to add the 6th one in verse 13. It says, continue putting up with one another and forgiving one another freely, even if anyone has a cause for complaint against another. Just as Jehovah freely forgave you, you must also do the same. So what's the 6th quality? Forgiveness. Dominant quality. Put it on. Look, put it on. Clothe yourselves. Isn't that Jehovah's dominant quality with us? Imitate him. It's hard. But forgiveness. So we've got compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, patience, forgiveness. Now, if you had to sum up those 6 qualities into one word, what would it be? They're all facets of what? Love. Look at the next verse. Verse 14. But besides all these things, here's that phrase again, clothe yourselves. Put this on. Clothe yourselves. Your dominant quality, clothe yourselves with love. Now notice the last expression, why this is so critical. In verse 14, for it, love, for it is a perfect bond of union. See, if all of us work to have these qualities dominate us, we put them on, never take them off, guess what? Satan will never be able to divide and conquer us. We will be there for one another. When one suffers, we're all going to come to the rescue. We're all going to work well together because we all have these qualities that dominate us. So this is how we will come off victorious against Satan's attack. Remember, Satan is trying to divide and conquer. Don't let it happen. And let me tell you, you're not. In fact, if I had to say something about this congregation, I would say, what a loving, hospitable, united congregation. It's a beautiful congregation. So may you, brothers and sisters, continue to let these qualities dominate and enjoy Jehovah's blessing now, and recognize you will be in line for everlasting blessings from Jehovah, all because we put these qualities on and we did not allow the devil to destroy our unity.